Hey everybody, this is Justin, and I'm going to try this camera today. The other camera I was using works fine for recording video, but I found that the lip sync wasn't as good for live video. So let me know if this camera is better. It's not as good quality, but see if I can mess around with the color settings here. Whoa. Just get it a little bit nicer. I don't know if that's better or not. Look at all these settings I can adjust. They're not necessarily better though, are they? Oh man. Yeah, I really don't like this camera. Maybe just let me know in the chat. Not necessarily better though, are they? Okay, so the audio is going good. Let me know in the chat if this is not synced, if my audio and my lips aren't synced, because that's what I'm trying to fix. But I think we will just get going. And I got a few folks joining me on Facebook Live as well. That's fun. I did it on the Mega Maker page for the first time, which was a bit different. And it's a little choppy. It might be my connection. I really need an Ethernet cable in this room, but I'm not sure what to do about that right now. Man, these color settings are bugging me now. I can reduce noise. Oh man. All right, enough fooling around. Let's get going here. So today I asked the folks on in the Product People Club what they thought I should talk about, and a few people, more than a few people, asked me to talk about this idea of how do you get through a project, how do you stay creative when you're in a rut, how do you slog through and get to the end when you don't feel like working on what you're working, or you just don't feel like working on anything. Yeah, sorry, Facebook Live. It looks like this connection is really not good. I'm going to try to get it fixed next week. So I thought I would start with a story, which is, as some of you know, this US election really affected me. And I had spent a lot of time before the election researching and reading and debating. And then post-election, I have not been happy with the results. And so I was spending a lot of time processing and debating and researching. And it killed my productivity. And here we are halfway through the month, and I haven't really worked on anything yet. The past 2 weeks have been a write-off. And so I had to get myself out of a rut as well. And yesterday, what I did is I forced myself to create something. I got into this room here. I set up my video camera. I set up a microphone, and I recorded. I just made myself record 3 lessons for this course that I'm working on right now. And I really didn't want to. I just felt I didn't feel like doing it. I didn't feel inspired. I didn't feel like, I didn't feel like I was going to get any good tape out of it. But I forced myself to do it. And it's amazing how getting a little bit of momentum can help you get over that feeling of being in a rut. because I recorded the first video. I told myself I'm just going to record 5 minutes. I recorded 5 minutes, and then I recorded 10 minutes, and then I recorded half an hour. And then by the time I looked up, it was, past lunchtime. And I had recorded all of this video that I could use in this project I'm working on. So that's, I think, one idea when it comes to getting yourself out of a creative rut is just forcing yourself to create something. I've said this before, but if I don't make something every day, I'm really grumpy. And usually, if I'm in a rut, it's because I haven't made something in a long time. And that could be something as simple as writing a blog post. It could be putting out a podcast. It could be, the other thing that helped is I have a friend that needed a website. And yesterday morning in the coffee shop, he came in and I said, hey, let's just sit down and build your website right now. And him and I worked on this website and put it live. We're hosting it on GitHub Pages, and he doesn't really understand all this stuff, so I was explaining it to him. And so just the act of building something for someone else, helping someone that needed my help, I also found helped me kind of get over some of these negative, just creative blahs that I was in. So that was one idea I had. And the other thing I thought of is, and maybe I'll draw this out, is, so I'm just drawing right now. Give me a second. Actually, yeah, no, I'll draw this because I want everyone to see, including Facebook Live people. So another idea is to picture where you are and remind yourself where you want to go. And in between here is the gap, what stands between you and your destination. And I like this for a few reasons. One, reminding yourself where you want to go helps you, again, picture, okay, yeah, that's the destination. That's where I'm trying to end up. It also helps you remember why you're doing this in the first place. So you are probably here in the trough of sorrow, working away. But over here, this represents all sorts of things. This represents, maybe it represents a paycheck. Maybe it represents getting something off your plate that you've had on your plate for too long. Maybe this represents shipping something that's important to you. So reminding yourself where you want to go, and then taking stock of where you are now. And I find sometimes when it's all up in my head, when I'm just thinking, this is stressful and I haven't accomplished anything in a long time, I don't realize that there's actually only a few steps to get to where I want to go. But when it's all just kind of up in my head and it's not on paper, it seems bigger. The problems and the obstacles seem bigger than they really are. And so I might list off, okay, what's standing between me and my goal, and just write the three things, right? Number one, number two, number three. Here I am, here's the goal, and what do I need to get here? Well, I just need to do these three things. And for some reason, putting it on paper really helps. I think the other thing that I think about a lot, especially now that I've gone independent, is this idea that the only thing that matters at the end of the day is the work that brings you closer to your goal. Nothing else matters. You can work on email, you can, browse Reddit, you can reply to a bunch of folks, you can be active in Slack, you can, do all these things, get all this work done, but the only thing that actually gives you progress is the work that brings you closer to your goal. And I've tried to evaluate my days based on that. And the way I've been doing that is well, I can't show you because my phone's right here, but I use this app on my phone called Day One. And at the end of every day, I try to open up Day One and ask myself two questions. What did I accomplish today? And what am I going to do tomorrow? What did I accomplish today? What am I going to do tomorrow? And what's helpful about this is I can look at, wow, I actually did accomplish some things. And I can also mark, these are the things that really bring me towards my goal, and X the things that are just superfluous, the things that don't really matter. And maybe the things I want to stop doing, so I can do the things that actually bring me closer to my goal. I found that when I'm slogging, if I do too many things that don't bring me closer to my goal, like if I take too many coffee meetings, meetings are the big one. If I take too many coffee meetings, if I'm doing like interviews with podcasts I don't really want to do, if I'm having to do things that aren't actually helpful, it depresses me even more. And so as I'm evaluating my day every day, it helps for me to X the things that I want to stop doing or I want to do less of, and mark the things that really bring me closer to where I want to end up. So just as a summary so far, I've said create something. Try to create something every day, even if it's something small. Remind yourself that the only work that matters is the work that helps you progress towards your goal. And the way I evaluate that is figuring out, where am I today? Where do I want to be? What stands in my way? That was this drawing right here, right? Here I am. Where am I going? And then the third thing is doing this daily journaling, which is asking myself the question, what did I accomplish today? And what am I going to do tomorrow? I also like it because if you wake up the next morning and you're kind of like feeling down or depressed or not energetic, I can just open up my phone and say, oh yeah, yesterday I said I was going to do these things. So if I accomplish these 3 things today, I will be making progress in my life. The fourth thing I thought of is having a mastermind group. So again, a mastermind is just a weekly accountability meeting. I do it with 2 other fellows, Paul Jarvis and Jared Drysdale. And I actually looked up when we had our first meeting. Let me see if I can find this now. How come I can't see it? Hold on. Our first meeting was back in 2014. And I find actually one of the big benefits of a mastermind group is if you take notes, it becomes like a built-in journal. And so I was looking back through all of our updates. So our meetings, everyone's different, but our meetings, we split an hour into 20-minute segments. And for 20 minutes, each person can share what they're working on, what they're struggling with, what their goals are, what they're going to try to do. And going back to July 3rd, 2014, and seeing where we were, all 3 of us back then, is so interesting and gives you perspective, because I can see, wow, we actually did make progress from 2 years ago until now. There's a lot of things that have happened, and sometimes having that long view of being able to see progress, of being able to see how things have changed, how you've improved, you had this goal and you actually accomplished it, is really, really helpful. So number 4, have a mastermind group, but mostly so you can keep this record of what you've done in the past and how much you've accomplished. Just for interest's sake, my first update my first goal, July 3rd, 2014, is that I wanted to make $80,000 Canadian in side products. So that was my goal for the year. And yeah, it's just interesting to look back on. At the time, I think Paul was hoping to replace his consulting, web development income, web design income with products, and he's accomplished that as well. Jared was hoping to launch a new product, and he's done that as well. So just being able to see everything we've accomplished is really encouraging. So that's number 4. And number 5, and maybe if you guys have questions or comments, or if I'm not quite hitting the rut that you think you are in, maybe just write a comment and I'll try to address it, or a question and I'll try to address it. The 5th thing that's been helpful for me is getting out of the house and making myself uncomfortable, getting myself out of my comfort zone. And maybe I'll expand on that. I think when we're not feeling good, our inclination is to kind of go inward and just hang out in our houses or our beds or, our offices, and just kind of be blue inside inside. And to get out of that, I think you need to kind of jolt yourself, give yourself a jolt, a creative jolt. And the only way I've been able to do that is to deliberately make myself uncomfortable. So this could mean going out, like logging into meetup.com and just saying, I'm going to go to one of these events. And it might be something you wouldn't normally go to. It might be, something you have, a meetup you haven't been to in a long time. But sometimes just getting yourself out of the house with people, interacting with new ideas is enough to get you out of that feeling of not being creative, not wanting to work on a project, not wanting to move forward. So last night, I drove 45 minutes to the city that's closest to where I live, and I watched this Design Disruptors documentary. And if you know me, you know that I'm actually, I like staying in the city. I'm a creature of habit. I like biking down to my office, being here, biking home. I don't like getting in my car and commuting places. I don't really like travel. But sometimes it's necessary for me to push myself to get out of my comfort zone, get out of my normal routine, get out of, go and see some new people, go and get some new ideas. And that was part of my thinking behind this documentary. Is it'd be really good for me to be exposed to some new ideas. And when I said yes to that, that was part of my thinking. Was they invited me to speak on a panel after the film, and my initial response was, no, I don't want to do that. I don't feel good. It's going to be a pain. I'm going to have to drive. And then I thought, you know what? I really need something to kind of jolt me out of this rut I'm in. And it worked. I went, just being around new people, having these new ideas in the film, and then being a part of this discussion panel afterwards was really encouraging. And I think if I had just stayed home, I would have continued to feel kind of like, I would have continued to be in my rut. So those were the 5 things that I thought of: how to get through, how to slog through a rut when you just don't feel like working or you don't feel like making. Is there any questions at this point, or any comments, anything you'd like me to clarify? I should have asked that earlier. I see people in the chat, but let me know if you've got questions. on that last point that I just made, I think this is another reason I forced myself to go to conferences. And MicroConf is coming up in Las Vegas. And that's a conference that I didn't go to for a lot of years for all sorts of reasons. One, I don't like to travel. Two, I didn't want to spend the money. Three, there's all these reasons. It was hard to get away from the family, and I finally went, was it 2 years ago, to my first one. This is my fourth one. This will be my fourth one this April. But I finally forced myself to go to this conference. And it was a sacrifice. I had to spend the money. I had to get there. I had to get on a plane. I don't like planes. I had to have layovers, all those things. But the amount of the amount of things I got out of it, and the amount of just kind of inspiration to go home and create, and go home and work on things, go home and work on projects, was amazing. And if we continue to stay in our little bubbles, I don't think that's good for our creativity. To be creative, we need to constantly be knocking up against other ideas, constantly be hitting other, running into things and getting exposed to things we hadn't thought about. So often, I was on a podcast. Was it a podcast yesterday? Yeah, I was on this interview yesterday, and the host was saying, asking me about, why it took me so long to go independent, basically. Why I waited until I was 36 years old to quit a job and quit consulting and make my own stuff. And part of it was, even though I was on the internet when I was 22 and 23, I was on the internet since I was 13 when Mosaic came out. But I didn't have the imagination. I didn't know what was possible. And so to me, like, the only business you could have on the internet was making websites. And I didn't realize that there were people who had, businesses making software and web apps and digital products. I didn't know about 37 Signals. In 2004, they sold, even before Basecamp, so 2001, 2002, they created this PDF report on the state of e-commerce sites, I think, and sold it for $100. And that idea, I just didn't even realize people were doing stuff like that. And so the key, and I keep having to remind myself about this, but the key to growth as a creative person is to get out of your comfort zone, to expose yourself to new ideas. And you can't always just do that in your hometown, watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts and listening and reading blog posts. You have to sometimes go to where, people are congregating at a conference or an event or a meetup. Sometimes you need to drive to the town right next to you. Sometimes you need to fly to Barcelona and really interact with those people, really kind of get the full force of what other people are doing, how other people are expressing their creativity, how other people are making an independent living where they're at. And that's been super, super helpful for me. I think I'm going to wind things down pretty quick here, unless anyone has a question. Derek is struggling with how to keep working on a personal project when you realize you actually don't enjoy it, but you want to finish it. So how do you keep working on a project, a personal project, something you started for your own sake? You're no longer enjoying it, but you want to finish it. Again, for me, what's been most helpful is getting it on paper, just saying, here's where I am, here's where I wanted to go, remind myself why I wanted to go there, and then just list what are the 3 things standing in my way. And then the first step is to just get yourself over that hump of saying, I'm just going to work for 5 minutes on it. That's it. I'm just going to commit to working 5 minutes on this. I'm going to open up my code editor. I'm going to write 5 lines of code, or I'm going to open up my video editor and edit 5 minutes of video, or I'm going to get my microphone and record 5 minutes of audio. I'm going to write for 5 minutes, whatever it is. And doing both of those things, saying this is where I'm headed, and then just like kind of pulling up your bootstraps and just getting one little thing done is enough of a snowball effect to kind of get you going and getting you moving again. And it's momentum that carries us creatively. It's momentum that carries us creatively. So that would be my advice, Derek. I mean, the other thing is you can always stop doing a personal project. If this goal no longer motivates you, if you feel like it's not worth it anymore, you don't have to keep going on it. You don't have to, you can change directions. I did this with, I started this year by saying I was going to make 100 things. I'm close. I think I'm at 70 or 80, megamaker.co/list. But I'm no longer focused on that as the primary thing. So that would be my advice for you, Derek. I got 2 more questions, and then, yeah, I think we'll probably wind things down. Enrique asks, what do you recommend? Build a small, non-profitable product, grow your audience little by little, and then launch your best idea, or just go with the big ideas? I think any big idea can be reduced to a small idea. And so usually what I say is you take your big idea, cut it in half, and then cut that idea in half again. So as an example, I want to build a full CRM software, customer relationship management software. So I would take that idea and go, no, I'm going to cut that in half. What does that look like? Oh, that looks like just a simple database where I can store customer information. And then I'm going to cut that in half again and say, I'm going to just create an Excel sheet that does the same thing. And then see if I can convince anyone to use that. So I think you can always start with something small and then grow it over time. Nothing that is currently complex started as a complex thing. Everything started simple. So if you go back and look at the initial version of Facebook, it is very, very simple. And look at any of the products you use and love today, they all started off as something really simple. So Enrique, I would take the seedling of your idea, the kind of core of your idea, and I would try to launch that first. And you could start by offering it for free, but and growing your audience that way. Also remember that sometimes taking the core idea and writing a blog post about it is a good way to build an audience. And if you're interested in how I'm doing this, go to devmarketing.xyz and click on articles, and you can see for free in response to the struggles my audience is having, and growing the mailing list that way. So people can buy the full product, which is Marketing for Developers, the course, or they can access this tiny little thing, this tiny little article for free. And I think that's a good way to start too, is to just start blogging about the topic, building up the mailing list, and then eventually launching something small and then building on that. So hopefully that's helpful. Larry asks, do you have tips for figuring out when you should move on from a project versus slugging through it and using the advice you mentioned? I think if the end goal no longer motivates you, or is no longer applicable, then you should switch. Then you should switch. I think also if often the end goal that we have is based on a hypothesis. So if you want me to get personal, my original hypothesis with Mega Maker is I'm going to commit to making 100 things, and I'm going to build this big audience of crafters, DIYers, hardware hackers, artists, creatives, and then my typical audience, which is people who make digital products. So I wanted to expand my audience from digital product people to this whole big group of creatives. And I thought the best way to do that would be, I'm going to make 100 things all over the spectrum. But what I found is that I actually didn't enjoy that as much. Like, I don't like making things with my hands, for example. I also found that the act of like making 100 things wasn't bringing me closer to my goal of making an independent income. It was distracting me from that goal. And so there's just a bunch of things that weren't working, right? The audience wasn't working. Lots of stuff wasn't working. And so I changed courses. I pivoted and said, Mega Maker is now going to be about people who want to earn an independent income from the things they create, specifically focused on product people who make digital products and want to be independent doing that. So I narrowed it back down again. I pivoted. So again, to answer your question, Larry, kind of two things. One, if the end goal it no longer motivates you. And two, if what you've done so far has shown you that you're on the wrong path. Your initial hypothesis was not correct. And that's the whole idea behind iteration, is that you do your first iteration and then you evaluate, and then you do your next iteration and you evaluate. So if what you're working on is no longer giving you the progress you desire, then you should probably switch, or put it on the back burner. So Network Effects, the web app that Marty and I built, is still going. It has paying customers, but we're holding off on kind of active development until Marty has his baby. Him and his wife are having another baby. So we can't do any more, we can't build any new features for a while. And so we're just going to put it on the back burner for a while. Hopefully that's helpful, Larry. Andrew asks, how did you decide to do a mastermind group? How would you start one today if you didn't have one? So I got asked this yesterday on the podcast interview too. And it's Hack the Entrepreneur. I'm not sure when that episode's going to come out, but I did an interview with John at Hack the Entrepreneur. So for the mastermind group, it's so funny. Like you view everything in terms of jobs to be done. So again, I was working full time, and I had just switched from being a remote employee to consulting full time. And so I was looking, here I am, and over here was, I want to eventually get to the point where I'm making an independent income from the things I create. I also I hadn't consulted full time since I was in my early 20s. And so I was thinking, I need to be good at consulting full time. And I eventually want to get to this point where I am making an independent living from the things I create. And so I saw the gap. I was like, what do I need to do in order to accomplish these things, in order to do these things well? I'm all alone here in Vernon, BC. There's really no one around me that's trying to do something similar. And I'd heard Rob Walling and Nathan Barry and other people say, mastermind groups were the key to their progress. And I initially with all those things, I'm like, bah, that sounds corny or stupid. Like mastermind, I don't like that name. And so I put it off for a long time. But eventually the progress I wanted to make was so strong that I said, I need to do this. If I want to accomplish these goals, I need to find some other people that are like me that can help me accomplish those things. And so at the time, Paul Jarvis was consulting, was doing web development and web design full time, and was building products on the side. Jared had just relaunched his web design consultancy and was building products on the side. And here I was just launching my first full-time consulting agency and trying to build products on the side. So the fact that we were all kind of in a similar space was one reason I reached out to those guys in particular. Also, at the time, they were both ahead of me, not by a ton, but like Paul had been building lots of products on the side and was close to replacing his web development income with his product income. So he was the furthest along. And then Jared was probably closer to me, but had way more success. His products had sold more than mine had. And so I felt like I was like the baby in the group, just trying to figure out like, okay, how can I get to the next step? And I felt like they could help me out. So that's how I reached out to those two. If I had to do it today, I would do the same thing. I would reach out to two people that I felt were in a similar place as me, similar situation, and that maybe were further ahead than me, or at least a group of people where we could all kind of give each other something. And I just reached out and said, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Are you guys interested in meeting every Thursday at 2? And we'll just do it on Google Hangouts, and we'll write our notes in a doc. And that's what we did. So yeah, I would ask two people, and if they said yes, then you've got yourself a mastermind group. Perfect. I think that is all of the answers. Sorry to people on Facebook Live. I don't know why it didn't work today. That is a bummer. I'll try to fix this for next week. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions, I'm on Twitter, the letter M, the letter I, Justin. Again, a lot of this discussion started in the Product People Club, and I just changed how that works. It used to be a monthly subscription, and now it is a pay once and get lifetime access. And for right now, when you sign up, you also get this free course I did called the Freedom Ladder. So if you want to access the forums and the Slack channel, it's productpeople.club. And yeah, you're free to join. And there's two tiers. One is for new makers, and others is for more experienced product people that already have launched products and already have revenue. So you can just choose whichever one is best for you. And yeah, you can join the conversation in Slack or in the forums. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great Wednesday.